So in the previous video, we looked at how we go about setting up the information that defines a setup. So again, we looked at setting up the machine, the coordinate system, defining the part geometry, stock geometry, and so on. Now, in many cases, you have multiple setups. So the question then is, how does one go about doing this for a second setup? As you can see here in the example we've been working on, there is a second setup. And if you click on the second setup, the geometry disappears. That geometry was defined for the first setup, but is not explicitly defined for the second setup. As a matter of fact, for the second setup, you may wish to use different geometry, or you would have to use different geometry. So let's quickly do the information for the second setup just to see how that works. So I'm going to double click on the second setup, and just like the first setup, I now have the information that I need defined by these buttons here on the left hand side. Now I need to do one step in addition for the second setup that I didn't have to do for the first setup, and that is I need to tell CATIA what the product or part is that has the geometry for the final design stock and fixtures. So I click on this button here, and I'm going to go ahead and navigate to the example folder on the desktop. So under MFGE 332-shortcut, under course materials, under CATIA training files, prismatic example 1. So if you recall, for the first setup we used this product, which is the VF2-S1 product. For the second setup, there's another product that has been created, VF2-S2. So I'm going to use this one instead. Hit open, and now you can see there's now a part or product established for the second setup. Notice that this is also placed in the product list. So I now have one for the first setup, one for the second setup. And the difference between the first and second setup, of course, there are a couple of things. First of all, the orientation of the part has been flipped, because now we're going to be machining the features that you see here. And also too, in this case, the stock is a little bit different because this stock takes into account what was machined in the first setup. This is not always easy to do. It's not always easy to model a stock that actually represents that in-process state. There are other ways you can get this in-process stock, but in this case, it was simple enough that one could create it using the part design workbench. So again, for practice, we're just going to repeat what we did for setup 1. Again, starting with setting up the machining coordinate system, which is the second button down. And again, in this case, I'm going to put the display into the top view, confirm that the compass is aligned with the machining coordinate system, so the x-axis to the right, y-axis vertical. And again, using the convention in class, we're going to put the coordinate system on the top right-hand corner. We don't have to change the orientation of the x because it's aligned with the x-axis of the machine. So that's our coordinate system setup. We're going to go to our machine. And again, our home position, it's slightly different from the coordinates for the first setup. So I have them recorded here. I'll just type them in, 8.844. The Y shift is 4.401. And then the Z position is 12.658. So again, that establishes our home position at this coordinate system up here with respect to our machining coordinate system. We have our product defined, which is in the tree. That's this one here. Our design, we have to select that as we did before for setup 1. So again, we need to hold on the Alt key to make sure that when we pick, we have the option to drill down and highlight the actual part itself. And again, confirm from the text window that this is the right path to the body that is the design. Same thing for the stock, which is easier because it's visible, it's in front. Again, confirm. Fixture elements, we'll use the same fixture elements that we did for setup 1. The fixed jaw, the moving jaw, and the two parallels. double click in the background. So there are 4 fixture elements. And then safety plane, we're going to again pick the top of the stock and then right click, offset upwards 50 thousandths, 0.05 inches. And our tool change position again is not correctly located. It should be the same as the home position. So we're going to just type in those same values that we typed in a minute ago. 8.844, 4.401, and 12.658. So again, that shifts our tool change point to our machine home point. And there you have it. So we have defined again, we have now defined, set up our second setup. So I hit OK. Clicking on setup 1, you can see the geometry switches to this part. So this is the underside of the part. Setup 2, part is flipped over. Coordinate system, top right hand corner. All the information is now defined for each setup. And we're now at the point where we can go in and start doing the hard work of identifying the operations or programming the operations that need to be performed to actually remove the material to generate the design.